My mother is trying to have me declared mentally incompetent to steal my house because I investigate plane crashes for a living. I'm shaking as I type this. I genuinely don't know if I'm looking for legal advice or just need someone to tell me I'm not crazy, because my own mother is currently trying to convince a court that I am. I'm 30M, and I work as a flight safety investigator for a major aviation consulting firm. We contract with the NTSB, airlines, and manufacturers to analyze incidents and prevent future accidents. It's my dream job. I've wanted to do this since I was 12 years old, when I watched a documentary about the Tenerife disaster and realized that there were people whose entire purpose was to make sure those things never happened again. I thought, that's what I want to do. I want to save lives. I bought my house 3 years ago. It's a modest 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood, but I've made it mine. I have aviation memorabilia throughout, vintage safety cards, a piece of certified wreckage from a historical crash that I purchased legally at auction, maps of accident sites I've studied, and a home office filled with technical manuals and investigation reports. My backyard has a small garden where I've planted trees in memory of victims from accidents I've worked. It brings me peace. My mother, Diana, 52F, is a talent agent in Los Angeles. She spent her entire career representing actors, models, and creative types. My younger brother Marcus, 28M, is one of her clients. He's been pursuing acting since he was 16, and in her eyes, he's destined for stardom. He's had bit parts in a few commercials and one speaking role in a Netflix show that got cancelled after one season, but according to my mother, he's always on the verge of his big break. I was never the star of the family. I learned that early. Growing up, Marcus was the one who lit up every room. Those were my mother's exact words, repeated so often they became a kind of family scripture. Marcus had charisma. Marcus had presence. Marcus had potential. I was serious. I was intense. I was, in my mother's favorite descriptor, dark. When I was 14 and built a scale model of the black box recovery from TWA Flight 800 for a school project, my mother told my father, they divorced when I was 19, that she was concerned about my fixation on death. When I got accepted to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, she asked me why I couldn't study something normal. When I got my first job offer as a junior investigator, she told me at dinner, in front of Marcus, that she hoped I would grow out of this morbid phase. I'm 30 years old. This isn't a phase. This is my career, my passion, and my life's work. 3 days ago, I was served with papers. My mother has filed a petition for conservatorship over me and my assets, claiming I am mentally incompetent and unable to manage my own affairs due to obsessive fixation and psychological instability. The filing claims that my obsession with aircraft disasters is evidence of a disturbed psychological state. It claims that my home is filled with death-related memorabilia and that I cannot separate myself from tragedy. It claims that I have isolated myself from family and rejected normal social connections. It wants the court to appoint my mother as my conservator. It wants her to have control over my finances. It wants her to have control over my property. It wants to take my house. I called my mother after I got the papers, and she answered like nothing was wrong. "Oh, honey," she said, in that syrupy voice she uses when she's managing someone. "This is for your own good. You've just gotten so wrapped up in all this dark stuff, and Marcus and I are worried about you. We just want to help." "Help me how, exactly?" "Well, you know Marcus is going through a rough patch right now. His agent, well, his other agent, not me, dropped him, and he's had some expenses. And that house of yours is just sitting there, collecting all that morbid energy. It's not healthy for you to live like that. If we sold it, we could get you into a nice apartment, something bright and cheerful, and the rest could help Marcus get back on his feet. Everyone wins." I hung up on her. I've spent 12 years of my life learning to investigate disasters, learning to trace causation, learning to identify the chain of failures that lead to catastrophe. And now I'm watching my own family try to engineer one against me. I've contacted an attorney. I've begun gathering documentation of my mental fitness, performance reviews, professional certifications, letters from colleagues. I have a psychiatric evaluation scheduled for next week with an independent professional. But I can't stop thinking about the irony. I prevent aircraft disasters for a living. I study systems designed to keep people safe. And my own mother is trying to crash my entire life to fund my brother's failing career. I always knew I wasn't the favorite. I just didn't know the extent of what that meant. Update 1. I've been recording everything. What I found is worse than I thought. It's been 2 weeks since my initial post, and I want to thank everyone who reached out with support and legal resources. The response was overwhelming, and several of you gave me advice that proved more valuable than you could know. One of you suggested that, given the nature of the allegations, I should document everything. Every interaction. Every phone call. I live in a one-party consent state for recordings, and I took that advice to heart. What I captured has fundamentally changed the nature of this case. 3 days after I was served, my mother called me again. I let it go to voicemail initially, but then I called her back, with recording software running. She was upset that I hadn't come around yet. "Evan, you're being so difficult about this," she said. "All we need is for you to cooperate. Just tell the evaluator that you've been struggling, that you need some support." "Is that so hard? You want me to lie to a psychiatric evaluator? I want you to be reasonable. Marcus needs this. You know how hard he's worked. Marcus needs my house. Marcus needs an opportunity, and you're just sitting on all that equity doing nothing with it. You don't even have a family, Evan. What do you need 3 bedrooms for? Your little crash shrine." I kept her talking. She wasn't careful. "Look," she said, "I've talked to some people. A friend of mine knows someone at the agency that handles conservatorship. She said that if you just go along with this, it's quick and easy. You sign some papers, we get temporary authority, we sell the house while the market's good, and then in a few months we drop the conservatorship. You get your autonomy back, Marcus gets his showcase, everyone's happy. And what do I get? You get to help your family, Evan. That's what normal people do." But the most damning recording came 4 days later. My mother had invited me to dinner at her house. A family discussion, she called it. I went. I wore a small recording device in my jacket pocket. Marcus was there. So was my mother. So was a woman I didn't recognize, who my mother introduced as Linda, my friend from the licensing board. The conversation that followed made everything clear. My mother opened with what she clearly thought was a compassionate appeal. "Evan, honey, we're not trying to hurt you. We're trying to help you see that this fixation you have isn't healthy. Linda here works with people who have mental health challenges, and she agrees that your lifestyle shows some concerning patterns." Linda, who, I later confirmed, has no mental health credentials whatsoever and actually works as an administrative assistant at a real estate office, nodded seriously. The obsession with crashes. The isolation. The morbid decorations. These are red flags, Evan. Marcus jumped in then, and this is where things got revealing. "Look, bro, I'm gonna be straight with you," he said, leaning forward with what I'm sure he thought was brotherly concern. "I've got this opportunity. It's a showcase. Like the real deal. Industry people, casting directors, the works. But it costs money to put together, and my funds are tied up right now." "Tied up how?" He glanced at our mother. She nodded. "I owe some people," Marcus admitted. "A lot of people. Some investments that didn't pan out. Some expenses that got away from me. And Mom's been covering what she can, but the agency isn't doing great right now either, and my house is the solution." "Your house is worth over $500,000, my mother cut in. "Do you understand how much that could do for this family? For Marcus's career? One property sale, and he's set. He can pay off his debts, fund his showcase, and finally get the visibility he deserves. And you." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You could start fresh. Somewhere without all that darkness. And if I say no?" My mother's face hardened. I'd seen that expression before. It was the same look she gave casting directors who lowballed her clients. "Then we proceed with the conservatorship," she said flatly. "Dr. Mehta, you'll meet with him next week. He's the evaluator I selected, has already reviewed your background. He's sympathetic to our concerns. And Linda's friend at the county clerk's office has been very helpful in expediting the paperwork." She'd pre-selected the evaluator. She had contacts facilitating the filing. This wasn't a concerned mother. This was a coordinated operation. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, maybe we should." "Marcus, let me handle this." She turned back to me. "Evan, I'm your mother. I love you. But you've always been difficult. Even as a child, you were never present. Never warm. You'd rather study plane crashes than have a conversation. That's not normal. And if I have to prove that to a judge to protect you from yourself, I will." I left without agreeing to anything. But I had everything I needed. I've since provided these recordings to my attorney. I've also filed complaints with multiple oversight bodies regarding the individuals my mother mentioned, the friend at the licensing board, the contact at the clerk's office, and most importantly, Dr. Mehta, who it turns out is not a licensed psychiatrist in our state. My attorney has also discovered that my mother's talent agency is under investigation for unrelated financial irregularities, specifically, client fund mismanagement. Several of her former clients have filed complaints alleging she diverted their earnings. The conservatorship petition is being challenged. My psychiatric evaluation, with a legitimate, court-appointed evaluator, came back with a clean bill of mental health. The evaluator's report specifically noted that my career requires high cognitive function, ethical judgment, and psychological stability, all of which I demonstrated. I've also filed a countersuit alleging fraud, conspiracy to commit financial abuse, and abuse of process. My attorney believes we have strong grounds. My mother left me a voicemail yesterday. She sounded furious. "I don't know what you think you're doing, Evan, but you're destroying this family. Everything I've done has been for you and your brother. If you can't see that, then you're even more broken than I thought." I saved that one too. Update 2. The investigation has expanded. My mother's world is collapsing. 3 weeks have passed since my last update, and the situation has escalated beyond anything I anticipated. Following my countersuit and the complaints I filed, multiple investigations have been opened. What started as a fraudulent conservatorship attempt has unraveled into something much larger. First, the State Board of Licensing for Talent Agencies opened a formal investigation into my mother's business practices. The complaints from her former clients, which I mentioned briefly before, turned out to be more extensive than I knew. 11 separate clients have now come forward alleging that my mother misappropriated funds, forged signatures on contracts, and failed to maintain proper escrow accounts for client earnings. Second, the District Attorney's Office has opened a criminal investigation into the conservatorship scheme. My recordings have been submitted as evidence. The individuals my mother referenced, the contact at the clerk's office, the unlicensed evaluator she selected, have been interviewed. 2 of them are cooperating with investigators. Third, my brother Marcus is facing his own legal problems. It turns out that Marcus's investments that didn't pan out were not investments at all. He owes money to multiple individuals for what investigators believe were illegal gambling debts, facilitated through an unlicensed sports betting operation. When he mentioned debts to some people at that dinner, he wasn't being dramatic. He was being literal. Additionally, my attorney discovered that Marcus was directly involved in planning the conservatorship scheme. Phone records and text messages show he and my mother discussing how to present the petition, how to make my career sound disturbing enough to warrant intervention, and, most damning, how they plan to divide the proceeds from selling my house. One text from Marcus to my mother, dated 2 weeks before I was served: "Once we get the house, I'm thinking 60-40 split. I need to clear the books before Tommy's guys get serious." My mother's response: "Fine. But we need to move fast. He's not going to play along forever." They called me E. They couldn't even use my full name while planning to steal my home. My attorney has added Marcus as a defendant in the countersuit. We're alleging conspiracy, financial exploitation of a family member, and fraud. Meanwhile, my professional life has continued without interruption. Last week, I completed a significant investigation into a near-miss incident that could have resulted in a catastrophic mid-air collision. My team identified a software error in the collision avoidance system that had gone undetected for months. Our findings have been forwarded to the FAA for immediate action. I spent 4 days analyzing flight data, interviewing crew members, and reconstructing the sequence of events that nearly killed 347 people. I identified the failure points. I proposed solutions. I did my job. And somewhere in Los Angeles, my mother was arguing to a court that I'm too mentally unstable to own a house. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. My father called me last night. We haven't been close since the divorce, but he'd heard about what was happening. "I'm sorry, Evan," he said. "I should have done more when you were younger. I knew Diana was hard on you. I knew she favored Marcus. I thought you were strong enough to handle it. I was a kid, Dad." Long pause. I know you were. We talked for an hour. He told me things he'd never said before, how my mother had pushed Marcus into performing from the time he was 5, how she'd always seen me as an obstacle to her vision of a showbiz family, how she'd told him once, when I was 10, that she thought there was something wrong with me because I preferred reading about aircraft to participating in school plays. She wanted stars, he said. That's all she ever wanted. And when you turned out to be something different, something she couldn't put on a stage, she didn't know what to do with you. So she decided I was defective. She decided you weren't useful. To her, that's the same thing. I've lived my whole life feeling like there was something wrong with me. Something dark. Something broken. It turns out the only thing wrong with me was that I wasn't what my mother wanted me to be. That ends now. Update 3. Criminal charges filed. My mother's career is over. It's been 7 weeks since my last update, and I have significant news to share. The district attorney has filed criminal charges against my mother, Diana Marlowe, on multiple counts: conspiracy to commit financial abuse of an adult, attempted fraud, and abuse of process. Additional charges related to her talent agency activities, embezzlement, forgery, and breach of fiduciary duty have been filed separately. She was arrested at her home last Tuesday. I wasn't there, but I saw the news coverage. She looked stunned, like she genuinely couldn't believe this was happening to her. I imagine she thought she was untouchable. In her world, image is everything, and she'd spent decades cultivating hers. That image is now irreparably damaged. The State Board of Licensing has permanently revoked her talent agency license. The hearing was last week. I attended, not to testify, but to watch. My attorney had advised against direct involvement in that proceeding, so I sat in the back and listened as former clients testified about years of financial manipulation, broken promises, and missing funds. One woman, a former actress in her 40s, broke down crying as she described how my mother had promised to manage her career, then systematically drained her earnings over 6 years. She told me I needed to invest in myself, the woman said. She told me the money was going toward opportunities. But there were no opportunities. There was just Diana, taking what she wanted. That's my mother. That's who raised me. Marcus has also been charged. Conspiracy to commit financial abuse, as a co-defendant with our mother. His involvement in the conservatorship scheme, documented through those text messages, was enough for the DA to pursue charges. Additionally, the Screen Actors Guild has opened a membership review based on the criminal charges and evidence of his gambling debts. He's facing the potential loss of his SAG membership, which would effectively end whatever remained of his acting career. I don't feel triumph. I don't feel satisfaction. I feel something closer to grief, the loss of the family I thought I might someday have, if I just worked hard enough, proved myself enough, became successful enough. I realize now that there was no threshold of achievement that would have made me matter to them. The civil case is proceeding as well. My attorney believes we have strong grounds for substantial damages. The emotional distress, the legal costs, the reputational harm they attempted to inflict, all of it is quantifiable. We're seeking compensation not as punishment, but as recognition of the harm they caused. Last week, I received an email that put everything into perspective. The FAA has nominated me for a Federal Aviation Safety Award based on my work on the Collision Avoidance System investigation. The nomination letter specifically cited my exemplary dedication to identifying system failures and preventing catastrophic loss of life. It called my work essential to the continued safety of the national airspace. I read that letter in my home office, surrounded by the aviation memorabilia my mother called morbid and dark. I looked at the framed safety cards, the technical manuals, the photos from crash sites where I've worked to understand what went wrong so it never goes wrong again. I looked at the trees in my backyard, each one planted for someone who died in an accident I studied, their lives honored through my commitment to prevention. This is not darkness. This is purpose. I called my father to tell him about the nomination. He was genuinely happy for me. Maybe the first genuine happiness I've heard from a family member about my career in years. You turned out exactly right, Evan, he said. I'm sorry it took me so long to say that. I'm learning to believe it. Final update. 4 months later. Resolution, recognition, and unexpected closure. It's been 4 months since my last update, and I want to provide closure for everyone who followed this situation. The criminal case against my mother has concluded. She pleaded guilty to multiple charges as part of a plea agreement. The judge sentenced her to 4 years in state prison. She reported to the correctional facility 3 weeks ago. At sentencing, she gave a brief statement. She said she was sorry for any pain caused, and that she never intended to harm anyone. She did not look at me. She did not say my name. I attended the sentencing, seated in the gallery. When it was over, when the bailiff led her away in handcuffs, I felt something release in my chest. Not satisfaction. Not vindication. Something closer to completion. A chapter ending. Marcus pleaded guilty to conspiracy charges and received 3 years of probation with mandatory community service. The Screen Actors Guild has revoked his membership pending the completion of his probation and mandatory rehabilitation program. His acting career, such as it was, is effectively over. The civil case settled last month. I received $620,000 in damages, compensation for legal costs, emotional distress, and the attempted theft of my property. My attorney called it a significant outcome. I called it recognition that what they did mattered. That I mattered. 2 weeks ago, I attended the Federal Aviation Safety Award ceremony in Washington, D.C. I received the commendation in person, shaking hands with the FAA administrator and several NTSB officials I'd worked with over the years. The ceremony was formal but warm. Several colleagues I respect deeply were in attendance. During the reception afterward, an NTSB investigator I've admired for years approached me. "You know," she said, "the work we do, it's not glamorous. We don't get magazine covers. We don't get fans. Most people don't even understand what we do. But every time a plane lands safely, every time a system catches an error before it becomes a disaster, we're part of that. That matters." "I know," I said. "I've always known." She smiled. "Good. Don't let anyone make you forget it." I haven't. But the most significant developments have happened in the past 3 weeks. Both my mother and Marcus have reached out to me, separately, without knowledge of each other's contact, following what I've learned are court-mandated therapy sessions. My mother wrote me a letter from prison. It arrived last week. I'll share the relevant portions. "Evan, I've been working with a counselor here, and she's helped me understand some things I never wanted to look at before. I spent my whole life believing that value came from visibility, from being seen, from being a star. I learned that from my own mother, who told me I was worthless unless I was on stage. And when you were born, I looked at you, and I saw someone who would never want to be on stage. I didn't know how to love someone who didn't want what I wanted. I told myself you were broken, that your interests were disturbing, that your quiet nature was a problem to be fixed. It was easier than admitting that I was the one who was wrong, that there are different kinds of value, that saving lives isn't less important than being famous. I failed you, Evan. Not because I didn't have enough resources, but because I didn't have enough love. I don't expect your forgiveness. I'm not sure I deserve it. But I needed you to know that I finally understand what I did. And I'm sorry. Your mother, Diana." Marcus called me 2 days ago. We talked for nearly an hour. He was hesitant at first, clearly uncertain how I would respond. But as we talked, something opened up. "Mom always told me I was special," he said. "From the time I was little, she said I was going to be a star, that I had what it takes, that people like me were meant for great things. And I believed her. I believed her so completely that I never questioned it. And me. She said you were." He paused. "She said you were limited, that you couldn't see the bigger picture, that your obsession with plane crashes was proof that you couldn't handle real life, so you retreated into studying death." His voice cracked slightly. "I believed that too, Evan. I'm ashamed of that now, but I need to be honest. I looked at you, and I saw what she told me to see. A broken person. Someone to pity, not respect. And now I'm in therapy, and I'm realizing that I was the one who was limited. You found something you loved, something meaningful, something that actually helps people. I spent my whole life chasing an illusion Mom created for me. I'm 28 years old, and I have nothing. No career. No savings. No real relationships. I built my entire identity on being a star, and I was never actually talented enough to earn it." "What do you want from me, Marcus?" Long silence. "I want to know if it's possible to start over. Not as the golden child and the broken one. Just as brothers. 2 people who got messed up by the same person in different ways. I don't know if that's possible." I told him I needed time. He said he understood. But here's what I've realized over these 4 months. My mother created a narrative about me that I believed for 30 years. I was dark. I was troubled. I was less than. And I carry that narrative with me, a weight I didn't even recognize because I'd been bearing it so long. That narrative was wrong. I investigate aircraft disasters for a living. I study the moments when systems fail, when human error cascades, when tragedy becomes inevitable. And then I work backward. I identify the points of intervention. I propose the changes that will prevent it from happening again. I save lives that will never know they were saved. That's not dark. That's meaningful. My house is still mine. My career is thriving. My commendation hangs in my office, next to the vintage safety cards and the technical manuals and all the morbid memorabilia that my mother used to decry. Yesterday, I planted another tree in my backyard. This one wasn't for a victim. It was for me, for the person I was before I learned to believe the lies, and for the person I'm becoming now that I've stopped. My family tried to orchestrate a disaster against me. They failed because I'd spent my entire life learning to identify disasters before they happen. Some crashes you prevent. Some crashes you survive. And some crashes teach you to build something better from the wreckage. I'm building now. Edit. Thank you all for following this story and for the incredible support throughout. Several people have asked if I'm okay. I am. For the first time in a long time, I really am. To everyone out there who was ever told they were too much, or not enough, or broken by the people who were supposed to love them, you aren't. You never were. Find your purpose, hold on to it, and don't let anyone convince you it's wrong just because they don't understand it. Clear skies ahead.